Okay, good afternoon everyone. I'm going to continue with the series today. This is going to be a short video and all I'm going to do is I'm going to make the materials look a little bit better. I am very far from being a material pro, but I wanted to just get it looking not as bad. And I'm just going to cheat and I'm going to borrow the voxel team's assets and some starter content assets just to make it look a little bit better. So the first thing we're going to do is you want to check that you've got your starter content installed. It's a toggle on the Unreal Engine when you're creating a project that you can use to add this content, and we'll be using one of the materials. I got this tip from an Unreal Sensei video on making a landscape material, so big props to him. I'm just going to use the macro variation technique he showed. And you'll see that in a second. And we're going to also install a voxel example because I'm going to use the voxel plugins example materials as well. So to add voxel content, right click in your content folder and click on add voxel content. And here we're just adding the nanite materials. It'll do a little download. I'm going to overwrite the files I've got just to make it obvious. And then it'll regenerate the world. It only regenerated the world because I'm probably using their mega material. Yep. So once we've downloaded the voxel example, we've got our voxel examples folder and we can open the nanite materials. Now there's a map demoing that there, but I'm just going to go into this material and I'm going to grab their Quixel base. Quixel base M is my version. Delete that and start again probably. Oh well, I'll just duplicate this. Quixel base, Valheim, and I'll move it into the main content folder with the rest of our stuff. Quixel base Valheim. So this is going to be the base material. Again, it's copied from the voxel example. And basically what I want to do here is instead of using the textures that they've supplied, I'm going to use the voxel metadata. So the colors that we're creating in our color buffer. So I'm going to get the linear color. I'm actually going to break it out into float 3 because I need to do that further on. And here we're going to break the material attributes and make the material attributes. And that's what's going to go into the final material. A bunch of these pins need to be pinned through. Displacement, normal, and roughness I think are the ones that are mainly used by this material. And base color obviously, but we are going to override the base color. So let me get my side screen. I did have my examples on a side screen. I'm just going to do that so that I can not waste everybody's time too much. This stuff is pre-prepared. So out of that, I just need the make 3 float. You'll see why I'm using this later on. This looks a bit redundant right now, but bear with me. I'm just going to apply that. And then on our voxel world graph, so I'm going to go to the actor that we're using, open it up, and I now want to change this material to the one that we have just created, which at the moment is called Quixel Base M. Oh, Quixel Base Valheim is what I called it, isn't it? Add it to the mega material. And yeah, so all we've got here is the textures that they've put on by default. And there's no different textures based on the, whether it's a mountain or not. And we would do that by setting up the material instances. So the material instances that they've got in their example, in the example content, are muddy leaves and gravel. So I'm just going to get both of them and duplicate them. Drag them into the content folder. No, I want to move it into the content. There we go. And open them up and repoint the master material to the new master material. Now it goes black because it's looking for the metadata, which obviously doesn't really exist while it's an asset in the viewport, but it will exist when it's assigned to a voxel world. So what we can do is go back into our graph and blend materials now. And we can blend based on these Valheim material instances. So I'm actually going to set that one there, and I'm going to set the gravel on top. And that is because I'm just going to use my mountain as a demonstration here. So I'm going to get the mask that I've set up for the mountain, so both the height and the around the border of the map. I'm going to plug that in there, and then add both of those entries to the mega material as well. And it's going to think about it for a minute. Okay, now what we have on everything, we still have the leaves displacement on the grass. And let me go and find some snow. When it switches to snow, let me get the camera speed right. You can see that we switch to the gravel displacement. So we've got the grass and then the gravel up there. So that's most of what we want to achieve. This blend is a bit large. We might shrink this blend in. So to shrink that blend in, we want to find our mountain height splitter, which is actually here. We can shrink that a bit. It's worth having a look at what that's doing while you're doing it. As you can see, it's very clear now what's happening. And then if I make it 100, it's a bit more spread out. But I think I prefer it at 50. So I'm just going to leave that there. And the last thing I wanted to do with these materials, I'm going to go back into the Quixel base. I'm going to close this. I wanted to add some macro variation, as I mentioned, based on Unreal Sense's, I think that's what it's called, video. So there's some slight modifications that need to be done for the voxel world. But essentially you go into the start content, find the gold material. Again, I'm taking this word for word what he did in his video, which I will link below. Copy and paste it in. And this multiply is where you need to join in. And that's where why I've broken out to the float 3. Because if you use a float 4, you get an error. So that is why I did this. Now, currently this will be broken. And it's not really doing any of the macro variation that it should be doing. Because we need to fix this. We need to swap those for absolute world position. We need to swap that for world position, and we need to get the XY. And another thing I found necessary is to make all of this sort of 10 times smaller. So move the decimal point 1 along. Apply that. And now we can see that I've got some macro texture variation here. And it's looking much more textured. Doesn't feel as bad. And actually, one final thing I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to look at these blends here, because that is a really long blend. So let's open the graph back up again. Now what I want here, so we are creating a blend between the meadows and the black forest, and the fall off is 500. And that is used both here to switch between the noises, and it's used in the color buffer to switch between the colors. And if I make the fall off, let me drag this graph into the world, and here we go. If I make that fall off 0, we end up with a very sharp cut. And the actual terrain as well, when the noise is different, is a bit pants as well. So we don't want that. We do want some fall off. But I personally don't like the material to blend as much as it is doing. So what we need to do here is you just need to introduce another height splitter. So I'm going to pull that in there. I'm going to set the fall off to much lower. And I'm going to promote the strength 2 to another variable. I'm going to call this Black Forest Sharp. And this sharp buffer with the fall off at a much lower value is what I'm going to use to swap the material or swap the color. So I'm going to use this here instead of that. And now my terrain is still smooth. There's no jagged steps on the terrain, but the material is much sharper. This doesn't affect the generation speed of the graph too much because it's only a few math operations to do this height splitter. But it's going to make it a much cleaner transition between the zones. So that is today's video, just a little material interlude. Next steps is I'm probably going to add in the two other biomes, plains and swamps, based on techniques I've already showed you. And I will make the origin spawn meadows rather than risk being Black Forest. I'll do that behind the scenes and I'll just run you through it at the start of the next video. Let me know in the comments section what you want me to cover next. I am probably thinking setting up the basic PCG to add some grass. But I'm not sure where to go next, so let me know. Thanks everybody. Catch you later.